Well, didn't your mother teach you? Ladies before gentlemen.
Sandra, let's battle this out.
Of course we're going to battle it out every Monday, 12:30 to 1 p.m.
Hey, no one has sweet me to glass porridge. I can't wait for listening.
Man have a right to, man have a right to. If you don't hurt me, me not go hurt you.
There is in the air! You catch it, you catch it, you catch it!
Your Wednesdays just got better with the Evening Flair with DJ Dollar Coin. Wednesdays 6 to 9 p.m. So tune in as he coins music education with musical juggling. And look out for that element of surprise. Join the Evening Flair with DJ Dollar Coin only on Stylz FM.
Edge, economics, democracy, governance, and justice.
Mondays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM with your hosts, Nicholas Chambers and
Katie Johnson. Edge, exploring economics, finance, and investments.
Edge, discussions on democracies and governance structures internationally.
Edge, highlighting matters that demand justice. Join us on The Edge, Mondays 5 to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM.
Brought to you by Bloom Care Center, Task Property Appraisals Company Limited, and Dubarry's Drafting and Construction Services. Welcome everyone to another feature, another episode of The Edge. This evening we are going to be continuing the discussion that we started last week into sexual harassment, the sexual harassment bill, the actions that are considered sexual harassment, and this evening we want to hear your view. So do not touch that dial, because when you return, we are going to continue that exciting discussion.
Edge, economics, democracy, governance, and justice.
Mondays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM with your hosts, Nicholas Chambers and
Katie Johnson. Edge, exploring economics, finance, and investments.
Edge, discussions on democracies and governance structures internationally.
Edge, highlighting matters that demand justice. Join us on The Edge, Mondays 5 to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM.
Brought to you by Bloom Care Center, Task Property Appraisals Company Limited, and Dubarry's Drafting and Construction Services. Welcome again, everyone, to another program of The Edge. My name is Nicholas Chambers, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Katie Johnson.
Evening, everyone.
You are invited to join us on our. In our discussion this evening. Yes, in our discussion this evening, you can join by radio. You can join by listening to us on Stylz Facebook page live. You can join by listening to us on my Facebook page live, and you certainly can participate by calling or by sending your WhatsApp messages to 876-453-1444. That's 876-453-1444. And if you are overseas, you can call or you can send us your WhatsApp messages on 954-338-7973. That's 954-338-7973. This evening, we want to hear your views. We want to hear what you have to say about sexual harassment. But before we go there, let me thank the persons who have made this, who have sponsored the program, made the program possible this evening. Bloom Care Center, Task Property Appraisals Company Limited, and the Barry's Drafting and Construction. So, last week we delved into the discussion, and we had some persons, some guests with us. And one of the things that came out is that the bill is gender neutral.
Yes, which I have some issues with.
And we also discussed some of the things that are considered sexual harassment. And so we're going to be continuing that discussion with Stokely Marshall this evening, attorney at law. But before we carry on, Mr. Marshall, as I said, I want to hear your views. I know persons would have sent me WhatsApp messages last week after the show. I know persons called and spoke to me last week after the show. No, man, I wanted to do it while we are on air. Call while we are on air, send your WhatsApp messages while we are on air, and send me your messages via Facebook while we are on air. Okay, and share your views. No, you said you had some challenges.
Well, this is the thing. While reading through it again, I realized something.
Yes.
I realized that the bill does not specify whom or what it is addressing in terms of genders or non-genders or non-binary, as they call persons who don't want to be male or female. That, I think, sets up a grand challenge, because how can a law be geared towards a specific thing when that specific thing is not addressed in the law? Meaning, the law is talking about sexual harassment, right? Sexual harassment must be between people, right? The very nature of sexual harassment means it has to do with sexuality, which is mostly, for the most part, between males or females, or from males to females, for the most part. We're not ignoring the others. So why doesn't it address the fact that we're talking about males and females? To me, that seems as if it is leaving the door wide open to all different types of interpretation as it relates to who are, suppose I decide that I'm an it, or they, or z, or zer. That's what is happening in Canada, especially right now. How does that work in our culture? It's too broad.
All right. But the act didn't say male or female.
That's my problem with it.
Yes, so a person can be anyone. It can be a transgender person. It can be a gay person.
We understand that.
It can be a bisexual person.
Right.
Yes, because it didn't make it gender specific.
Yes, but this is the issue. How can a law that has to do with sexuality, and sexuality has to be specific to gender, or is it that is not so? Is it sexuality is now divorced from gender?
Well, some persons are trying to do that.
But this is what I'm saying. It's setting up a template for gender being torn away from sexuality.
What do you mean?
Meaning, it's like this. If there is no attachment with gender and sexuality, it means sexuality is fluid. It means tomorrow I can show up to work and say, I'm a woman. And
persons are doing that now.
But our present law doesn't allow for that in Jamaica.
For that switching of
for that switch, yes.
Right, and that is, well, unless I'm not understanding you, but I believe it is for that very reason that the legislation was gender neutral.
And that's the problem, I'm saying. It cannot be neutral to gender when gender and sexuality are inextricably linked.
What is 439 saying there?
439 is saying, good point, KD. There's also bestiality, which is legal in Germany. Thank you, 439. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but 439, with the greatest of respect, the act would not be covering bestiality.
Why wouldn't it be covered bestiality?
It has to do with relations between human beings.
Does it say so in the bill?
And animals.
Does it say so in the bill?
So you want the bill to be specific to say that it's speaking about humans?
Yes. It might sound outlandish now, you know. It might sound outlandish
let me
now,
ask
but
my producer to get Mr. Marshall on the phone. I think it's time for Mr. Marshall to enter the discussion now. But I don't see the necessity for it at all.
I see a necessity. I think it can come into conflict with laws in a way that we're not foreseeing right now.
If I'm at work, I identify as male. Tomorrow morning, I decide I'm neither male nor female. How does it affect? How would it impact the the bill if it came into law?
Well,
because I'm still a person.
Yes, you're still
and the act speaks about a person.
Yes, but this is the problem. Jamaican law does not give any. I don't want to say this wrong, you know. It does not speak specifically to non-binary persons. The laws in Jamaica does not speak to non-binary persons, unless Mr. Marshall can update me on that. So if the law itself is centered around an idea that has been around from the beginning of time, that there are males and females, and then how does it now come into place where we are enacting laws that can be interpreted in any which way you want it? How, if I walk in tomorrow and say I'm a female and then somebody says something to me, I can say sexual harassment because I'm not a female.
Yes, but remember, you know, a complaint can be made by one female against another female for sexual harassment. Remember, that can happen, you know.
True, but guess what? Check the scenario now. Somebody makes a comment towards another co-worker, right? Like, for example, I'm a male makes a comment to a female and says, I like your, I don't know, your skirt looks nice on you today, or something to that effect, right? The female.
Hold on a minute. Mr. Marshall?
Yes, sir.
You're there. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for joining us again this week in the discussion. My friend was raising a point, Mr. Marshall, and I decided that I was going to allow you to join in on this point and comment on it. What's your point again, Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Marshall, my lawyer friend, I have an issue with this bill, this proposed sexual harassment bill. The bill is said to be gender neutral, right, Mr. Marshall?
It is.
All right. So I'm asking a question. How can the law...
And I say so with qualification because to the extent that you regard... I'm so sorry about that sound in the background. To the extent that you may regard some categories as gender, such as transgender, that, in my view, is not included. But in terms of male and female, in the traditional sense or in the usual sense, it is gender neutral. Yes, sir.
Right. I'm saying gender is not just linked, but biologically, without a shadow of a doubt, scientifically linked to sexuality. I'm saying if the law is gender neutral, why doesn't it specify the genders? Because if it's neutral to gender, doesn't it contradict itself there? Because it's as if it's separating gender from sexuality.
Well, I will not say yea or nay to what you just said, but the Constitution of Jamaica explicitly sets out that there's been non-discrimination on the basis of being male or female.
But you're right, so male or female.
As far as the Constitution is concerned, and all laws in Jamaica ought to conform to the Constitution.
Right.
So since the Constitution already sets that out, it's arguable that any reference to sexuality or the sexes of a person in this legislation, draft legislation, ought to conform properly to the Constitution.
I agree with you, but you noted that you said the Constitution speaks about non-discrimination as it relates to male and female.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm saying is this law is
It's not law yet, though.
this
Bill.
proposed this bill has the option basically of separating gender from sexuality, because as you said yourself, the Constitution speaks to male and female.
A challenge with what you just said, however, is that my understanding, and I haven't had access to the notes or what you call the Hansard at Parliament, so I haven't had sight of it. But my understanding is that when the Joint Select Committee or the relevant group of Parliament was meeting to look at this legislation, draft legislation, there were submissions by persons from groups representing gay, lesbian persons. I don't know if transgender was included, but I'm going to assume if they were. They wanted sexual orientation, for example, to be included in the draft legislation. My understanding is that other groups were not in favor. I am told that the committee decided not to accept sexual orientation as part of the wording of the bill, and because I know sexual orientation and gender identity tend to go hand in hand when people are, for example, making these kinds of submissions, then maybe they would have also rejected gender identity. I'm not going to say I know for sure, but I am told that submissions were made for the inclusion of sexual orientation, which, as you may know, is a term which has been judicially interpreted to include the right to enter into a same-sex marriage. So to the extent that that was excluded, maybe I'm assuming gender identity was also excluded.
Okay, all right.
So if you were to try to if you were to look at, for example, if you were trying to understand how to interpret the statute, some persons, when they're trying to figure out how to interpret a statute, they don't look at the mere words on the sheet or on the document. They will go behind the statute to look at what went into the discussion, like the memorandum of the objects and reasons, which is part of the background, but they might even go to look at the notes, the Hansard, to see if they can understand the meaning, what was intended and what was not intended.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to do was to look at some of the finer details of this proposed bill, yes? And I'm looking at the definition of sexual harassment, Mr. Marshall. And one of the things I saw where it says it means the making of unwelcomed sexual advance. The challenge I'm having with this, with the wording there, unwelcomed, is how am I going to know when it's welcome or unwelcomed? The challenge I see there, Mr. Marshall, is what is going to be my cue to say that I can now make welcomed advances?
Put it in writing.
I think your observation is very important, because a challenge many persons will have is that they are really not going to know when it's welcome or unwelcome. That's the truth of the matter. An unwelcome sexual advance really can be any situation where the person rejects or shows that they are rejecting whatever it is you did or said or gestured or indicated in any way to show that you have a sexual interest in them.
But I would have already made the advance. That's the challenge I'm having.
Right. So it almost puts the potential defendant on the back foot, because you may not know, based on the literal wording of this, you may not know if it was welcome or unwelcome until after the fact.
Right.
Which in a sense discourages you from making an advance in the first place. That's my view, actually.
Right. Okay, and he continues to say, by which another person, advance towards a person by another person which is reasonably regarded as offensive. No.
Yes.
Some persons might find my putting my hand on their shoulder offensive.
Right.
While some persons might not find it offensive at all. Some persons might find my use of words saying darling and sweetheart offensive, while some person might not find it offensive. The challenge I'm having again, this is subjectivity is what makes me concerned.
Well, arguably what you can do in advance is seek to ascertain whether a comment that you would make is consensual, which is a little... It is not something which is done, and I also...
Oh, what? I do what? I go up to her and I say, tell me something. Can I make a sexual advance at you?
Well, you could probably indicate to her, well, and call her by her correct name, because if you use a euphemism which she doesn't like, that might be another challenge.
Yes.
But you could probably try to say to her, using her correct name, would you be offended if I said something to you that others would think is sexual harassment? And just watch her reaction.
What others would think? What others?
Or what others? In other words, you just throw in the word others to sort of open the door to see how she'd respond.
Mr. Marshall, again,
I'm not giving a wording on your radio station for people to
Mr. Marshall, back to my point. I realize Nicholas said, mentioned himself in the scenario as male, and you said her. Back to what I was saying. What if the person said, listen, take offense, and the person said, no, I am it, or I am they, or ze, or zer?
Well, I'm glad you went there, but before I go there, I want to touch on the word reasonably, because sexual harassment in the legislation means the making of any unwelcome sexual advance towards a person by another, which A, is reasonably regarded as offensive. Usually when legislation includes the word reasonably, what they are attempting to do is to raise the test to an objective type of test. What would the average person, the reasonable person, not somebody who is necessarily, going to be unreasonable in how they respond, but how would the average person respond to that?
Right.
The challenge still with the word reasonably, I think, in our context is, I think reasonably might have to be interpreted based on the culture of the society.
Right.
And you could come from, let us say, for example, someone who lives in maybe South America, where my understanding, my information is, don't quote me, my information is that there's a little bit more friendliness in Latin America. And so someone from Latin America who gets a job here in Jamaica, and you can have that in reality, you have companies in Jamaica that hire managers from Latin America.
Right.
And so such a person, whether male or female, may not mean to sexually harass anyone, but they may make a comment that someone here might regard as overly sexual. So how do you draw the line? Then you might have a situation, especially in a culture where you have more than one, you have people from different backgrounds, different cultures working in the same place. So maybe someone from, say, Scandinavia, who may not be, I don't know for sure, but they may not be as open and as warm and as friendly as some other person from, say, Latin America. They're working in the same space, and the person says something to the other that is deemed offensive or unwelcome sexual, or treated as an unwelcome sexual advance. You can have some gray areas, I think, even if you have the word reasonably there. So a court would have to now sift through all of that to come to an understanding as to what is really reasonable.
So we're really looking at a trial, a hearing.
You could be looking at a hearing unless it can be resolved at mediation, because these things can also be resolved at mediation, which actually might be the better approach to deal with some of these matters. Where maybe some of these various cultural norms, etc., can be brought to the fore and stated, explained, and you can also have nuances between I mean, I don't want it to seem as if it's a discussion about class, but even say uptown, downtown, you can have different nuances and different interpretations based on the section of the country you are from.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. Now, in relation to what Mr. Johnson just asked, I think he indicated reference to him or her, for instance, and the person responds by saying, well, I am an it or Z or Z. Well, that is the sort of response you could get from someone who is transgender and who is concerned about the gender pronoun you use for them. You may be aware that in places like Canada, it is a massive issue there.
Yes.
You can be fined.
Persons have been relieved of their employment, even for not using a pronoun that the transgender person deems appropriate for them.
That's another topic all by itself because
all by itself, right.
I have some fundamental challenges. But moving on.
Yes. Well, in Jamaica, I don't think, based on how this legislation is crafted and having regard to the non-acceptance of the submissions, for example, to include words like sexual orientation, I don't think that kind of objection would be countenanced here, certainly not based on what I'm seeing. I don't know if another attorney would have a different view, but that is my view. I don't think it would be countenanced or regarded as a violation.
Okay.
Of legislation if it becomes law.
Let me just break here. We have to go for a break, Mr. Marshall. And we're going to ask you to stay with us until we return. Now, those who are listening, this is what I want you to do. I want you to WhatsApp or call or whatever it is that you want to do. Send a comment on my Facebook page or on Stylz Facebook page. Tell us what you consider, or tell us an experience where somebody did something that you considered as sexual harassment, or something that you did that you consider sexual harassment. Women, females who are listening, do you think a man coming and hugging you and asking you if everything is okay, is that sexual harassment? Would you consider it sexual harassment?
A touch on the shoulder.
A touch on the shoulder.
A comment about your
men,
your dress.
Would you be offended by a woman? Any man who would be offended by a woman saying something sexual about him or to him, and would view it as sexual harassment, send us something as well and let us hear you.
The number.
Right back after this.
453-1444. Remember? 453-1444. Edge. Economics, democracy, governance, and justice.
Mondays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM with your hosts, Nicholas Chambers and
Katie Johnson. Edge. Exploring economics, finance, and investments.
Edge. Discussions on democracies and governance structures internationally.
Edge. Highlighting matters that demand justice. Join us on The Edge. Mondays, 5 to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM.
Brought to you by Bloom Care Center, Task Property Appraisals Company Limited, and Dubari's Drafting and Construction Services.
Carib Hardware and Electrical Supplies, formerly known as Everything Electrical, has everything electrical for both residential and commercial needs. Lighting fixtures, cement, lumber, steel, customized windows, doors, bathroom accessories and fixtures. Everything for your built-in needs. Solar heaters, generators, AC units, tools, inverters, with a certified team for all your electrical installations and services. Easy payment plans with cash apps such as Zelle payments and PayPal. Convenient parking. We also deliver. Give us a call, 342-1607, 715-641223. Send us an email, everythingelectrical1@hotmail.com. Everything Electrical.
Everything Electrical.
For complete auto repairs and services, come to Akon Auto Technology, located at 33 Bumble Crescent, Port Antonio, Jamaica. We offer specialist services in wheel alignment and wheel balancing, brake drum and disc rotary servicing, state-of-the-art ultrasonic cleaning and testing of your fuel injectors. We also stock an assorted range of auto service parts, tires, and motorcraft batteries. If we don't have it, we will source it for you. Call us at 876-715-5205 or email aconautotech16@gmail.com. Acon Auto Technology, beyond the typical auto mechanic shop.
Amidst the shocking COVID-19 pandemic, Germany's Auto endorses social distancing with great and exciting discounts on all make vehicles for all potential purchasers. We partner with financial institutions in providing smashing bargains. There is a 50% discount on your processing fee, and Germany's Auto will pay your first month installment in full. Conditions apply. First responders, to include soldiers, police, doctors, nurses, firefighters. We have your interests covered. Healthcare workers, your preferred package warrants special attention. Germany's Auto, 52A West Street, Port Antonio, and White River Ultra-Race locations awaits your call for your vehicle. 819-0466 and 822-6569.
Oh, I'm here. How you feel, so? Why me have a tea take the whole night last night? You know, go to dentist. After me no know. I mean, you know dentist, you don't know about Portland smells. Then I wear that there. Right in front of Army Lane at the plaza upstairs as I got Jacob's Law Firm office. Turn right, one nice dentist place up there. Then I wear them do up there, so. They do a lot of things, mama. Extraction, cleaning, examination, filling dentures, root canal, crowns, x-rays. And if you want braces, they do referrals too. Now if you find up there right, you know one can chun too. Because the whole of in front teeth them are rotten out. Portland Smiles, 42 West Street, Port Antonio. Open Mondays to Fridays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Call them at 876-603-9042 or 876-422-3333.
Edge, economics, democracy, governance, and justice.
Mondays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM with your hosts, Nicholas Chambers and
Katie Johnson. Edge, exploring economics, finance, and investments.
Edge, discussions on democracies and governance structures internationally.
Edge, highlighting matters that demand justice. Join us on The Edge, Mondays, 5 to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM.
Brought to you by Bloom Care Center, Task Property Appraisals Company Limited, and Dubarry's Drafting and Construction Services. Welcome back again. We are discussing the sexual harassment bill. We are looking at what is considered sexual harassment, what you consider sexual harassment, experiences that you have had, things that has made you uncomfortable with particular co-workers. We want to hear you on it. I see some listeners making some points, but I want to ask something, Mr. Marshall. You're still there?
Yes, man, I'm still there.
Is there a statute of limitation? Meaning, is there a point where you can't carry the complaint against me again?
Well, the draft bill as I'm looking at, and which I downloaded from the Houses of Parliament website, has a limitation period of 12 months. However, I believe it might be changed because the minister did indicate without saying so. Well, it is the same 12 months that was being referred to by the current Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck. And you may have heard in the news some weeks ago that there was a large hue and cry because he wanted to remain at 12 months because he was concerned about the Me Too movement, where persons many years later would come forward and say they have a claim. However, based on the reaction, the negative reaction to his comments, which were aired on national television, it was indicated that maybe that 12 months will be changed. So I don't know what.
I think there was a contemplation about 5 years.
5 years?
Or something like that, yeah.
Well, put it this way. What I recall being said in the national media is that since ordinarily you have up to 6 years to file the average claim, that maybe you should at least allow for that time.
But you see, you know the problem I'm having with that?
Yes.
So I used to work at X place. And I moved on a long time. I gone somewhere different.
Three different jobs.
And 4.5 years later, there's going to be this complaint
against it, yeah.
Against me for a job that I leave 4.5 years ago. I have a problem with that.
But Mr. Marshall, one more thing.
I think it should be more immediate.
True. The bill, if passed, would it be retroactive to the statute of limitation, whatever it is?
6 years. That's what he said.
No, meaning. The bill is passed tomorrow, right? Is it retroactive? Meaning, what if I decided that I was sexually harassed last week or last year?
Yes. Does it make it retroactive, Mr. Marshall?
Well, that wouldn't be the term used because, for example, and I'm going to use this, I hope I'm not making anyone uncomfortable, your listeners, etc. But let us say, for example, a child was interfered with at a young age, and the child didn't even realize what was happening to her or him, because maybe in that community where that child grows up, these things happen routinely. You know, whether the Don does it or an older family member. And so many years later, the person sort of comes to themselves and realizes, you know, I was really being interfered with in an inappropriate way. You wouldn't really call it a retroactive complaint or a retroactive situation. You're simply now making a report based on the wrong done to you at the time. So I don't think the term used would be retroactive. You're simply now making a complaint, period. However, the test is going to be whether at the relevant time it was unwelcome. It may have been unwelcome at the time, but for whatever reason, you didn't seek to report it. You just handle it in the regular course of things. Many young ladies, I know the legislation doesn't cover catcalling, but many young ladies, they go about their daily lives, and they're called to by men on the street, and they just brush it off or whatever, because they don't want a backlash, so they just let it slide. You know, and then maybe, let us say, it may be all unwelcome, but they allowed it. If tomorrow morning they put a clause or a provision rather in the draft bill and it becomes law, you might find some of those ladies coming forward. It's not really retroactive, you know. They seem to now becoming a little braver because the legislation is there.
Okay, Mr. Marshall.
Yes,
we have a listener, 439, making a good point here. What if an advance is made by one person to another, and the person on the receiving end welcomes this advance, and then someone else sees the precedence and decides to make the same advance, trying to, you know, see what his luck is or her luck is, and then the person rejects that person as being sexually harassing? How do we deal with that kind of a situation where...
Because you see, what is interesting, and I'm not a sociologist or psychologist, but one of the interesting things about, well, in Jamaica there's a saying, every hoe having stick a bush. So the fact that you welcomed it from John doesn't mean that you're welcoming it from Tom.
So I am not the hoe, I am not the sticker bush that the hoe is going to welcome.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the fact that you saw someone else do it and got through, or, you know, got away, if I could use that term, doesn't mean that the other person will have similar fortune. I
get you, but again, it comes back to the challenge I'm having about how do I know that is going to be unwelcomed? Yes?
You often will not know unless you figure out a way to test the water ahead of time. And I don't mean it in a bad way. You figure out a way to test the water ahead of time to know whether it will be accepted or not. Maybe I don't know, you know, whichever way it's done.
Mr. Marshall.
Hold on, there's a listener who is saying on our Stylz FM Facebook page live, is saying, what if you don't know her name, so you can't address her by her name and you still want to get a talk? And another listener is saying, what are you saying? Are you saying different strokes for different folks? Sexual harassment is the same all over. It doesn't matter who it is.
Well, I don't know what the latter comment means about different strokes for different roles.
I suppose when we were talking about the uptown thing as opposed to the downtown thing, yeah, the two different Jamaica,
etc.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
go ahead.
In relation to not knowing the person's name, many times you don't know what. Mr. Johnson might jump up again when I use it. Gender. Many times you don't know the female's name, but you figure out a way to say something to her regardless, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right. A listener is saying here, touching their view of sexual harassment, touching in inappropriate places. Okay. Yeah.
So in other words, sticks and stones are touching will break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yes, is the touching this person have a problem with? 421. Yes.
Remember the definition of sexual advance, physical contact, about sexual nature.
Mm-hmm.
A demand or request for sex or for favors of a sexual nature. C, the making of sexual suggestions, remarks, or innuendos. D, the storing of pornography or the display of images or objects of a sexual nature. And E, any other physical, gestural, verbal, non-verbal, or visual conduct of a sexual nature. It's a wide definition, especially when it gets to E.
Right.
So bear all of that in mind. I want to touch on something before I think I don't want it to be lost in the discussion. I just want it in looking at what we mean by sexual harassment. I know I said a lot about, what it means in a general sense in terms of sexual advance, but for it to be sexual harassment, it must have a particular effect. It must have the effect of, one, interfering unreasonably with the work performance of the person to whom the sexual advance is made, or two, creating an intimidating, offensive, or a hostile work environment.
Right.
And the matter of the effect is very important. And a judge or tribunal looking at what sexual harassment is going to, may not have to only consider whether there was an unwelcome, whether there was a sexual advance, but will also have to look at whether or not it changed the work environment into an intimidating, offensive, or hostile one, and or whether it interfered unreasonably with your work or your job performance.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in terms of intimidating, offensive, or hostile work environment, I've seen where in other countries where they have already gone ahead and implemented some of these types of legislation. In those jurisdictions, for example, I'm speaking specifically of the U.S., an intimidating, offensive, or hostile work environment can even include using graffiti or writing something on a board or writing something on a desk, etc., to, as it were, attack you based on your sex.
Right.
So let us say a man trying to harass a female, he may draw a picture of female genitalia, for example, and place it in or around where her workstation is. So even though he never actually touched her,
right,
that can amount to creating a hostile work environment or intimidating or offensive work environment that can arguably qualify as sexual harassment.
Okay. Mr. Marshall, we want to thank you for joining us for a second round of the discussion. We know that you would have had to eke out some time out of your busy schedule, and we want to thank you for giving us a little of your insight on this bill.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Do have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks. Let us go to some of the comments that we have here. I have Diana from out of Canada is saying, ladies are often offended when it's someone they don't like. But if you work with someone and make an advance and it's rejected, leave her alone. If it's continued, then it's harassment.
Good
All
point.
right, folks, remember you can call in at 876-453-1444. That's 876-453-1444. I know somebody was asking if there's something wrong with the line. No, there's nothing wrong with the line. You can call in now.
No.
And if you're calling from overseas, you can call on 954-338-7973. That's 954-338-7973. And you can WhatsApp us on those numbers as well. Please don't call by WhatsApp. Call the line straight, but you can leave your comments by WhatsApp. There is another listener who is saying here, the sexual harassment law that they are putting together, what kind of sanction will it carry? Criminal or civil?
Good question. Isn't it civil?
No, it's a criminal offense.
It's a criminal offense?
Yeah.
So hold on a minute there. You're telling me that I might pass a comment to my coworker, just an innocent comment, and I can go on my criminal record?
No, I don't think it becomes a record issue of your record, unless, of course, it's a persistent action.
Really?
Yes, but I can look at it.
So what you're telling me that if I murder somebody the first time, it don't go on my record the second time?
Remember, it goes to a tribunal first. You can carry a civil suit, or it goes to a tribunal. No, it's not a criminal issue; it's a civil issue.
Right.
All right.
As I raise that point, Mr. Chambers, the social demographic of the persons on that tribunal, which will be deciding whether or not I am charged or whatever penalties apply to me. What about the social demographic? The gender makeup of that tribunal, is it 50-50, male, female? Yes. We don't want persons who are ultra-Americanized uptown people who are offended by the slightest microaggression be too heavy on this tribunal. It's going to mean that a lot of persons are getting into serious trouble for just normal behavior.
Good point.
What about what Mr. Marshall said? The context of the sexual advance. In other words, I come from downtown, and I talk Racha, right? And I talk to her and I say, Miss boy, I love you this and that and that and that and that. Am I going to be judged differently from somebody uptown that says it very eloquently? I really admire your skirt and that split fits the
I get where you're going.
You get where I'm going?
Right. Another listener saying, humans are competitive beings, and courtship is one such competition. It's natural in the animal kingdom, and rejection is also natural. Well, yes, I suppose so. And that is the danger of this bill, because it has the potential of restricting courtship.
Right.
On the Facebook Live page,
we have Ricardo Porteous. He says, it is good to teach the children from early what is sexual harassment and let them know what to do if they are attacked. Know the word attacked,
if they are attacked?
Yes, he said attacked.
So sexual harassment is not seen as an attack.
Well, persons can look at it that way if they want, I guess.
All right.
Talk the Journey says, are the phone? No, Talk the Journey. The phone lines are not down.
The numbers are 453-1444. That's 453-1444. Engineer, the line's working. That's two persons now asking. But make a call, folks, and let's see whether or not this line is working. But it's 453-1444, and of course you have to put 876 before it. All right. Let me see. Right. One of the challenges that I'm having, you see, is this. Let me see. Did we read this one? If another listener says here, if I comment a woman like, compliment. If I compliment a woman like saying she look nice or you look good in that dress.
Right. If that is considered
this is
sexual
out of
harassment.
Calgary, yes.
Yeah, basically.
Is that sexual harassment?
Well, that could be the test phase.
Is it welcome? Is it unwelcome? Because that's the problem,
But that could be the test phase. I'm testing to see if this person will accept my advance.
But there are some persons
right.
Who will say the very look you give me.
But it's in the bill.
Look that is undressing me and I dislike it.
But the look is in the bill.
Yes.
Look. So in other words, gentlemen and ladies, if you look according to this proposed bill, just looking at somebody in a way that they perceive.
The bill say looking?
It says non-verbal.
Oh.
Yes.
So if I stare too long?
You better stare for about 2 seconds and move on.
Is there any male or females out there having a problem with that idea? That I can't look. I see a call here. Caller, can I ask you to call back, please? Just call back. All right, so Garfield is saying if everyone is being as sensitive with this sexual harassment, how will the opposite sex meet each other?
Garfield, outside of the workplace.
We have a caller. Caller, go ahead, please.
Yes, question.
Yes.
All right. When I'm looking at harassment without looking what the definition is in the dictionary, but thinking of it as to where experience lies, I am thinking of harassment being something that was repeated and not a one-off situation, because if you're going to compliment a woman and then she's going to take that as an harassment, you know, it's a very dangerous way to put any individual in.
I agree.
You know, if I compliment her and I'm rejected and I pursue her, then she could deem that, in my opinion, as
harassment.
Harassment. So I think clarity needs to be given as to what point it would be deemed
harassment. I think that's a good point. There has to be some. I agree, caller. Thank you for calling. I agree. There has to be some clarity as to when it becomes sexual harassment.
Right.
Because as it is now, how I interpret it, is that just the very first unwelcomed advance.
Right.
Could be deemed sexual harassment.
And the caller is very peculiar, you know. Harassment. How can you harass someone at the first time? How do you harass? In other words, how do I harass,
harassment has to do with being a bother.
A bother, and you can't be a bother if I say something the first time. Does that work?
What if there were other persons who were being a bother to me and you is just the next one?
Oh Lord, that's the
so
problem.
you are a compounded bother. You're a compounded bother. A listener here saying, I think this bill they are looking to pass is already unconstitutional and it's not in effect as yet because you can't stop someone from looking. Well, any other male out there want to share Garfield's view? If he say you can't stop someone from looking. I don't know how we're going to stop. I mean, you see, that's the thing. It's a bother. So if I look at you once, and I stare you down. Tomorrow you come back, I stare you down again.
How do you know that it's
I'm going to know that you don't want me to stare you
exactly.
Down. I suppose you're supposed to come over and say, I don't like how you look at me.
And then if you look at me at the person,
and then if you look at the person after that, then it becomes harassment. What an unfortunate thing. I suppose many of us will have to close our eyes to beauty nowadays.
Oh, look at this comment, Mr. Chambers. Look at this one. In reality, there are persons with dreamy eyes naturally. So what if I have dreamy eyes and I'm just looking at you and you think I'm trying to seduce you? Huh?
Anybody out there have dreamy eyes and think that you might get in trouble? That's a good one. What if I have dreamy eyes? No, but it's not the dreamy eyes that's the problem, listener. It's whether or not you are staring consistently, intently, and with with intention.
No, but I am in front of my colleague or my
subordinate. If I look and I give a little wink.
I'm in a room having a meeting with my co-worker or subordinate or whatever. Mm-hmm. I have to be looking at them to talk to them. If I'm looking at them and talking to them and my eyes are dreamy.
How long you looking?
In other words,
how you looking? You're looking me from head to toe? Mm-hmm. What you're doing. And you know, one of the things is, I've heard females talk about this tall glass of chocolate. So,
oh, really?
Yes, what? A man is supposed to feel unwelcomed by such a definition? I don't know. You know? I don't know. I mean, I can imagine persons who are short might feel offended by the use of a tall glass of chocolate.
Well, I'm not offended because I'm a tall, dark glass.
I'm not even going there. Moving right along. But, you know, listeners, you might hear us talking. We are not making light of the fact that there is, in fact, a concept as sexual harassment. The truth is, many females are made to feel that their job is dependent on doing sexual favors for their superiors.
Right. Or accepting sexual innuendos.
Yes. Many persons are made to feel that their workspace, it's normal behavior in their workspace for someone to keep touching.
Right.
And if you complain, then we're going to put you through the door. It's a reality.
True.
And it is something that I suppose that this bill is trying to grapple with.
Yes. And
how do you control that problem?
Right.
Without necessarily curtailing
normal human behavior
and normal human interaction.
Right.
So we are smiling and we're laughing and we're looking at it, listeners. But we are not making light of the fact that there are some real challenges. We're flirting fall in that? Advance. A flirt is an advance.
So no flirting.
And what is flirting?
That's the next thing.
That's the problem, you know, because if I look at you and say, my, that dress on you today, that's a flirt. But that might be an unwelcome sexual advance. You see the problem?
And
if she says to you, if she looks at you and doesn't answer and move along, and tomorrow you say it again, because of course she never make up her face, she never give you a bad eye or something, yes? And tomorrow again you come back and you make another similar comment. She doesn't comment. And the next day you make another comment. At what point do you realize, does it become an harassment? If there is nothing that is being verbally said to make you believe or feel or acknowledge that this person does not want that advance.
But hold on. Another complication. One person said you sexually harassed me. How do we prove it? I say you said something, you deny it. Are we going to go in a situation where people are going to be sneaking in their phones into offices to catch someone saying something in order to prove, because they know that if they go to the court or the tribunal, it's going to be my word against yours?
Right, and on that note, I will end by a comment made by one of our listeners. Our culture is being colonized.
By whom?
By whom? You see?
I will dare to think who is thinking about,
we get funding from a whole heap of places, you know.
Exactly.
So who doing the colonization? But that's a good point. I want to thank you all for joining and for listening. I want to thank everyone who has joined on our Facebook page live, and particularly the persons who have commented. I want to thank the persons who joined by WhatsApp. I want to thank the persons who called and joined into the discussion. It's a real problem some places, folks, but for some places there is really no issue, and so it's a challenge to find the balance between the problem and where there is no problem. But it's a discussion that I believe that should be continued, and as we continue that discussion, just be aware that your coworker may not like something that you're doing.
And be careful.
Yes, just be aware and be careful in what you say, what you do. Before we go to the credits, it's election time, folks. Everything is election. You hear the dub plates that are being put out. Well, as of next week, we are going to start our own election countdown. We're going to be discussing third parties, the viability of third parties. We're going to look at the two parties that are there, and we're going to see whether or not, you know, what are some of the manifestos, what's in some of those manifestos, and we're going to discuss them, flesh them out. We invite you to join us for those discussions. As of next week, it is all things politics.
Right. And we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We have Bloom Care Center, located in at 130 Moonlight Bay in St. Marcus Bay, Portland. They provide residential and in-home nursing care. They can be contacted at 913-3247 or 876-368-1493. We also have Task Property Appraisal Company Limited, located at Farmy Building, Fort George Street. And they can be contacted at 862-0509 or 656-8735. They're also located in Maxfield, 125 Maxfield Avenue also. And Dubari's Drafting and Construction, located at Port Antonio and Kingston. And they provide architectural drafting, 3D visualization, interior designs, and construction services. And they may be contacted at 876-382-7002 or 543-1007.
My executive producer, Ms. Gaynor, thank you. My engineer, thank you all the time. The king, the king of all kings in the studio, while him being our engineer, you know. Yes, want to thank you, my brother, for always making sure that we get what we need to get done. Have a good evening, listeners, and join us again next week.
Economics, democracy, governance, and justice.
Mondays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Stylz FM with your hosts, Nicholas Chambers and
Katie